Alright, so we're getting ready to do a CPU upgrade in a CoCo 3. So right now Richard Lorbieski has taken the cover off of the CoCo 3.
Yeah, so what we're doing is we are going to be replacing this. This is 6809. It's soldered, so in order to upgrade it, we're going to remove this. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to keep the pins intact, so this will actually be reusable.
So we're going to physically remove the 6809. You have to actually desolder it.
Yes.
You're going to do that from the bottom.
From the bottom. Yeah, there's a little shield here that I got to take off.
There's the shell. There's the CoCo carcass, if you will.
And so it's this. Yeah, it's going to be this one right here.
Okay.
The other thing I'm going to be doing is you can see when they did the wave soldering on here, these chips here, then they put the module on and a couple of other things like the switches, and they left the rosin. This is the leftover from your soldering. And I'm going to also remove all that as well. That will magically disappear.
Very cool.
Okay, so like there, I'm going to go down like that over there gently, and then I'm going to wiggle it around a little bit, so the wire gets or the pin gets loose, and then I use the vacuum. And you can see, do you have a close-up of that?
Yeah, I do now.
Okay. But you can see how there's no solder there compared to the other pins right here. And there's 40 pins that I have to do.
Okay, so this is desoldering the CPU right now.
Yes.
And you make it look really easy when you have this tool.
Yes.
So step one is it melts the actual solder.
Right.
And step two is it sucks it off the surface. And so this becomes a desoldered thing.
Right.
Now, if somebody doesn't have this fancy solder sucker thing, what would they do?
Okay, well, there's a couple of tools you can use. You can use a regular soldering iron.
Yeah.
You can use a tool like this, like a solder sucker.
Okay.
And the way to do that, and I need to find some solder. The way I do that is I would heat up the solder onto the place I want to suck up.
Right.
The new solder, what this does is it heats up the old solder and it combines together. And then I use this solder sucker down here. And the other thing is I gently put this against the pin and the solder itself. I don't press down on it.
Okay.
Because if you do, you'll actually damage the pad. And then I put this on there and it sucks it up. Just like that. But it doesn't do as good as job as the other.
It seems like the...
yeah, the other tool is much efficient.
Yeah.
See, I can do that with this, go like that.
Is that a common thing that people who do this for a living, they would be using that tool quite a bit?
Yes, they would use this. There's other vacuums available. This one's a commercial grade solder sucker.
And what would that cost?
This one usually runs about $1,500.
Wow. Okay.
But it has temperature control. This also includes the irons. It's a unit all, and you can actually install a third iron if you need to.
Okay.
And they're independently controlled as far as temperature. They go up to 900 degrees.
Wow. What's the preferred degree for the CoCo?
The CoCo, I usually go to desolder anywhere from 675 to 725 degrees. I have it set right now at 725.
Wow.
But you don't want to get it too hot, but you don't want it also to get too cold. It's just, each kind of model computer board can be different. Now, like I would probably put it at a higher degree if I was going to take out this module here because it's just going to require a lot more heat.
Okay.
Like this particular pin right here, it goes to a ground. Or actually, I think it's 5 volts, one or the other. But you can see that what will happen is the heat gets transferred onto the trace itself, or sometimes you have like a ground plane like here. So if you apply heat, a lot of that heat will dissipate into that area there. So you have to be a little bit more patient to suck up that solder.
And that's a 40-pin processor?
This is a 40-pin processor.
So there's 20 pins on each side?
Yes. Yeah, this saves a lot of time.
No doubt.
But I use something like this because I solder all the time. I do this at my primary business as well, my primary job. So
this is literally a tool of the trade for you.
yes. But most people you can get, if you're going to get a soldering iron, what I would recommend is get one that has a temperature control, a variable one, at least it has a readout of the temperature. It's not necessarily the wattage that you have to worry about, it's the temperature.
When you apply a new solder,
Yes,
how long does it take for that solder to become cool and have that joint permanent?
almost instantly, almost
Really?
like a second or two.
It's like carterized.
Yes. And the thing is, you got to be a little patient. You got to let the solder flow when it heats up, and then it will flow onto the metal and also the connector itself, or the pad.
This is the ideal way for a chip replacement.
Yes. I mean, the good thing about this type of chip replacement is I actually save the chip itself.
Right. So you're not. Yeah. Some people I've heard that they would cut the legs off the CPU.
Right. That's actually probably the easiest way of doing it. And like on some of these low end, like the LS244 or something like that, those, they're very common chips. So it's just faster to clip those leads.
And would you still need to desolder it from the bottom, or does that allow you to do it from the top?
You can do it from the top, but you still have to at least suck up the solder for the through hole to go through.
Yeah. It just seems to make more sense to do it this way if you have the wherewithal to do it that way.
And this is another ground thing. This takes a little time. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, this is another useful tool that I have, is a magnifying glass. Because then I can check all my connections, make sure I bring all the solders out. And it looks like it is. Do move a couple of things over. Okay. And now comes the fun part. Now I have a very fine flatbed screwdriver, and I gently go in there.
Could you use a normal IC puller at this point, or because it's not in a socket, it's not necessarily the same thing?
Yeah, the IC pullers are they're a little awkward to work with, and there is a tool out there, and I couldn't find mine, but it has a little curved tip on it to where you can actually go up and then pry it up. But if you're very careful, like this one's giving a little bit of resistance. Oh, there we go. So it's just stuck a little bit, and you just gently, to make sure, you don't want to have too much, if there's a little bit of resistance, sometimes you have to use your iron to heat it up, but this one pretty much.
It's almost like removing a wisdom tooth at this point.
Yes.
All right, so we have just pulled the brain out of the CoCo.
Right, and you can see all the chips or all the pins are intact.
Let me get a close-up of this here. So yeah, so this is the CPU, And yeah, the pins here are in perfect condition, so
right.
there's
you
not
can actually reuse that chip.
the CPU can be reused.
Right, so if you decide, if let's say this chip malfunctions, or
you can just put this back in the same socket.
just
I
put
can
it
just
right there and you're good to
I
go.
can just put the 6809 back in there. And
Now-
if the 6309 ever goes bad, we could replace that too, now with the socket.
Yeah, anything with like a 40 pin like this, it's always best to put a socket in there. Now what I'm going to do here is clean the top part, remove any kind of contaminants, rosin, or anything else that might be there, and then I wipe it down with a Kim wipe.
Okay.
Or you can use some kind of lint-free tissue. And then on the other side, you have all this rosin stuff, and I'm going to go ahead and remove that. What I'm using is acetone, which is nail polish remover, basically. And you can see like this gunk here, I'll apply it. And then pat it down. I'm not going to clean it completely because I'm going to be resoldering this. And then I'm also cleaning it with alcohol, which is another cleaner. Okay, now I'm going to look under the microscope to make sure that I have all my connections in. Okay, what I was checking for was sometimes you have solder splats that go between pins and stuff like that, and I just clean them up with the soldering iron like that. You want me to go ahead and do a close-up? Or you can see how clean that connection is.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost like it's never been touched.
Yeah, it's very clean.
So now,
Almost looks like a prototype board now.
now all we do is get a socket.
Now, is this socket pretty standard for a lot of different CPUs? The 40-pin socket, was that like a generic form factor?
Yeah, yes, they come in like, you can get surface mount ones, you can get different types, but usually on the old vintage ones, it's these dual 20-pin or 40-pin like that. The sockets I use, there's actually 3 types that are used. You have a single wipe, which has, as you can see that on here, you have connectors on both sides here, but on a single wipe, it's only on one side. Those are the least expensive, and I don't recommend anybody using those. The second best is the double wipe, which is this one right here. You can see that it has connectors on both ends. And the best ones are what they call the machine, which are like the little round
I'm going to let my camera focus on this for just a second. But what do you mean by connections on both ends right now?
As you can see, if you put this, just as an example, if you had put this chip in here, you can see on one side there's connector here.
Yeah.
And you can see on the inside, on this little rows here, you can see that there's there's the pin or the thing that can connect up to the back side of here. On single wipes, they're only visible on one side only. So you don't have 2 places like this chip would be inserted in. There's 2 sides that this can make a connection here.
Okay.
On a single wipe, there's only one point that can have a connection, and over time it can get corroded, loose, and cause problems. I don't recommend single wipes.
Okay.
Double wipes are good. The best are machine. I usually don't like using machines because it has to be really precise when you put in a new CPU. And it's just my preference.
Okay.
So, but yeah, the machine ones are probably the best ones to put in. And then all we have to do here.
And that should literally fall into place.
Yes. Should.
Now there is a pin 1 indicator for this, or a notch or something, so you know where
there is a notch. You can see on the very top. That indicates that that's pin 1 right there.
Let me zoom in on that. Hold on one second, let the camera focus.
Okay.
Or not. Yeah, okay, I can barely see it, but yeah, there's the notch. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's your pin 1 indicator.
Right, and of course on the board itself,
You see the notch there.
you see the notch.
So we're matching the notch on the socket to the notch on the kind of silk screening on the PCB.
Correct.
Okay.
And sometimes they fall into place. It's just, sometimes you have to give it a little bit of
Okay.
wiggle.
A little bit of encouragement.
Yes. And this one fell in pretty good. So you got to make sure it sits flush. And then what I do is I solder in one pin in.
Okay.
To make sure that it stays in there, and I have my fingers underneath it, so I keep it flush with the board.
Yeah, because that's another thing too. Is it's got to be flush. It's almost.
And then I do the other side.
You kind of get in the corners, at least a couple of the corners.
Two corners.
Okay.
And that's in.
All right.
So now what I'm going to do is double check, make sure that I'm flush, which I am. And now.
Great to see you. Looking forward to seeing you in April again. Thanks for the newsletter too, by the way.
So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and start soldering the rest of the connections. So all I do is I put the heat right here along with the solder, and it just flows right into it like that. And then I just continue on to the next pin.
You make it look so easy.
Yeah, when it's clean like this, it just makes it a whole lot easier. Because the solder loves heat, and there's built-in rosin in the solder itself, so it just flows right into the connection. Now when I solder, on this particular board I have it set for 680 degrees. Add some more solder.
It has quieted down here a little bit now.
And there's also various types of tips that you can use. I like using the chisel tip. Some guys like using the bigger ones, but it's just a matter of preference. That's one of also the keys to good soldering is make sure your tip is nice and clean and shiny. Okay. And I use a little bristle thing like that. Some people use a
wet sponge.
Wet sponge. Either one is fine.
Okay.
And now what I'm going to do is just look it over real close. Everything looks okay. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean off all this rosin. You can see it's kind of the material. And I'm going to remove all that. Like this. And it's going to flow down because all that stuff is just going to flow off the board. Or at least down there to where I can wipe it off. And I'm going to do this over here as well. You can see there's that yellow stuff.
Is that the equivalent of like soldered discharge?
Yes. Yeah, this is that rosin. Or they call it flux. You can see how it's breaking all that stuff up. It makes it look a lot nicer. Now this is something I don't, most people don't do. You don't have to, but it just makes it look a lot more. that's what I try to do, is make it to the point where you can't even tell that it's been worked on.
So those need to be heated up to be cleaned, or just putting that solution on there does that?
Yeah, just put it on there. And all this is nail polish.
Okay.
You can get it at any
Acetone or whatever?
Yeah, acetone.
Yeah.
You can get it at any drugstore. It's readily available anywhere. There's no magic formula that you really need. Some people actually dilute it with alcohol, 91%, which is fine. I mean, because I also have alcohol in here and I use that. Helps cleans it up.
That's cool.
One of the other last steps that I do is, you'll see that these pins kind of stick up, and we're putting that shield on. And so the best thing to do,
kind of snip them or file them down or something?
I snip these down.
Okay. And that doesn't affect the integrity of the solder joint or the connectivity of the contact or anything like that?
No, not at all. I do this because I want it to be a dull point here so it doesn't penetrate the RF shield.
Now, with modern motherboards, even now, the modern CPU is still socketed. But there are, just knowing the laws of physics and how circuitry and electronics work, there are some benefits to having things kind of hardwired to the system board versus being in a socket. And you do lose, when you're talking about high performance circuits and speed, you do lose some performance going through a socket, don't you?
Mainly it's just the connection. And the reason that they put sockets in there is because sometimes these chips are too valuable to go through a wave soldering machine. But and that's what they did early on with a lot of these CPUs, and especially if they had failed, it's just a pain in the neck to pull them out.
Right, so a socket is a convenience. I was just wondering, for like on the modern PC, where everything is about the speed and the megahertzes and gigahertzes and how fast we can move things across the bus.
Yeah, it doesn't really affect it. Now, the other problem that can happen with a socket is over time, it can get loose. The connection between the connector and the CPU or whatever circuit can degrade, and you have to either reseat it or take it out and clean it. And we have to do, and if, like on the industrial machines we work on, there's no sockets at all. Everything's hardwired.
Direct surface mount.
Yes.
As far as best bare metal performance, surface mount is ideally better.
Right.
But as for my serviceability, that's not ideal.
No.
So it makes sense if a component needs to possibly be replaced or upgraded that you have an easier way to do that, and that's where your RAM chips and your CPUs are going to still be socketed, I guess, right?
Well, because they also could be upgraded too.
Right. Oh, your desk mount just came unmounted.
It broke, finally. David, where are you?
David Ladd, the spirit of David Ladd is haunting us.
He must be thinking about things over here.
Okay. Anyway, take a look at
You
that.
need someone to hold that for you? You good?
If you could hold it just for a little bit.
Sure.
That is as clean and pretty as David Ladd is.
Yes.
Oh, Jesus.
Okay.
Just about as shiny.
Yeah. Luckily, I'm finished with this, so we can
Okay,
actually
let's
try
take it
to.
down. We now have a new cranial socket to replace the brain in.
Yes. So we got that. Okay. So we just put the CPU socket in, or CPU in there, and we're ready to button it all up.
Nice. So you're going to put the RF shielding back on?
Good game. That's tough.
Hey, man. Good. I'm just, watching this. I've never seen anything like this. Yeah, we're already up and running.
Wow.
So the brain works.
The brain works.
The brain works. The patient is alive. We just had a brain transplant and we survived. Now the ultimate test.
Yes.
What cartridge is this?
The diagnostic cartridge.
Diagnostic cartridge, okay. Which is not designed to diagnose anything that's currently in here. We make sound.
What's going on, everybody? The Original Gamer Stevie Stroh here, and I want to talk to you about amacoconut.com. If you love the color computer like I love the color computer, then you got to visit amacoconut.com, your one-stop shop for all of your Tandy Color Computer links needs. There you'll find links to blogs and podcasts and project sites and emulators and downloads and groups and communities. If you love the color computer, head on over to amacoconut.com. That's I-M-A, coconut.com. Tell them the Original Gamer Stevie Stroh sent you. CoCo forever, people.
And there we go.
Does the on-off button work?
Yes. Okay.
And that's your SCART cable.
Yes.
What's going on, everybody? Original Gamer Stevie Stroh here, and if you're a fan of vintage computing and retro gaming, then you're going to love our retro swag shop at 8bit256.com. There you will find custom designs by Instagram artist Joel M. Adams. You can get I'm a Coconut, Coco Talk, and other cool video game images on a t-shirt, coffee mug, or mouse pad. So if you love retro, then head on over to the retro swag shop at 8bit256.com today. Tell them the Original Gamer Stevie Stroh sent you.
Very cool. Well, thank you, Richard.
You're welcome.
Are we done with the surgery?
Yes, you're done.
We're done. All right, well, that's a wrap, folks.
It's a wrap.